Okay, class, so let's talk for a minute about what exactly we're going to be doing today. It's big. So we played around last time in Packet Tracer. I showed you how to set up inter-VLAN trunking. And it was router on the stick. So we had our router, we had the stick, we had two VLANs coming off the switch, right? VLAN 10, VLAN 20. We configured sub-interfaces on FA00, and that went out to FA01 on the switch, FA02 went to VLAN 10, FA03 went out to VLAN 20, okay? And we issued commands on the switch ports like switch port mode access, switch port access, VLAN 10, switch port mode access, switch port access, VLAN 20, and on the trunk it was switch port mode trunk, encapsulation .1Q, 10, 20, and so on and so forth, okay? So that's the Cisco way if you're working with a Cisco switch. Today, we're working with an HP switch. And there are two of them. Oh yeah, okay. Now, we've got them mixed up, so I don't know which one's which. And they're both, yeah, they're both 2610s. So one of them I've already configured, and one of them has not been configured at all. The one that I configured this weekend, it was passworded, and I had to like factory reset the whole switch. I also had to do some configuration on this Watchguard right here. So this one is set, already configured and working. The Cisco switch, or the Cisco router rather, the 1900 series router is already configured and working. And one of these Procurves is configured and working, and one of them isn't, and that's okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to test to make sure that the network will allow us out past the WAN. So to do that, I need a cable to plug into the Watchguard, okay? Here. Okay, first, let me talk about what we're doing today, because it's actually a bit more. Obviously, we're working on real equipment, right? Or at least I am. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do stuff on real equipment. And when I feel like you guys, that's when I'm recording it, right? So you guys can watch it again and again. And once your confidence level is high enough, once I have a 5-minute meeting with Jim to ask some questions about the IP routing on those on the racks back there, I'll have you guys essentially redoing this over there. But there's going to be steps that I show you today that are more involved than what you're going to be doing. So the purpose of today's class, and probably the next class and the next class, is probably going to take a while to get this done, is to show you how to configure your own home lab for you guys to practice on your own time and become highly skilled and potentially get some certification, okay? So when you're working with Cisco and you're working with Cisco Packet Tracer, you're only learning Cisco. And then you get out into the real world and you realize, hey, not everything is Cisco, right? You've got different brands. Now, generally, IT people will specialize in one thing or another. Maybe they'll do 2 or 3, okay? There's IT people that are specifically Juniper. There's others that are specifically FortiGate. All right. And the fundamental laws of networking don't change depending on what brand you're using. But implementation changes. And it can even change within one brand between device to device, but overall it's fairly consistent, okay? So first things first, I need some power for this. I'm going to grab my power bar for the cabinet. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to configure a Watchguard firewall router. That is not part of any kind of Cisco curriculum at all, okay? And we're going to use that as a border router. So we're going to use the Watchguard XTM 25 as a border router, and we're going to configure routing on it. Okay, it will get an IP on the network port, which is port 0 or the network port, from DHCP hopefully. Okay, if it doesn't, that means nothing's going to resolve during this lab. But I can still show you how to configure everything, okay? Just depends on how you're set up. I'm looking for power. All right, power. I guess while I'm at it, I'm going to grab some networking cables in the back there. So we're going to connect from I want you to be thinking about this like you're doing this at your house, okay? Like you're configuring your home lab for your house. So the networking diagram for this looks different than this, okay? Similar though, at least the switching part of it. At your house, assuming you have like a cable modem or whatever, okay? That's the DOCSIS router, and it's owned by a cable company. We'll make that like shaped like this, okay? And then you're going to run a line from one of the network ports off that DOCSIS router. It's going to be a crossover cable. Okay, it can't be straight through. Crossover cable. Here's your cable coming in. That's a cloud, right? We're going to crossover cable from here to the Watchguard. This becomes your perimeter router, okay? You can set up a firewall and all that stuff on it, keep you safe, and also set up routing on this as well, okay? And this gives you a lot of insight because you can see all the traffic coming across the router as well. What connections are opening, what's going where. Okay, so next, so that's coming in on network port 0. And then from port 1, that's going to go to our management PC, okay? So this is my laptop here. And port 2 is going to go down to the Cisco 1900 router. So this is not going to work out of the box, right? We have to configure each step when I'm the WatchGuard has to be configured to know the routes that this Cisco is going to route, okay? So you have to set up routes on the WatchGuard, and then the Cisco router has to be set up so that it knows the routes as well, okay? We're going to do VLAN trunking down at the switch. And there's going to be a PC down here. Okay, this is pretty complex, but this is like a high secure way to set up a network for an office, right? Because you've got your next generation firewall. It's going to see all the traffic coming in from the internet and protect you against malicious stuff, okay? It's just it's a subscription service that WatchGuard offers. They will monitor the traffic and look for any kind of Trojans and viruses or attacks and denial of service and all sorts of stuff. And they'll just block it on their end, okay? You could also configure VPNs on this. We're not going to do that today, but I had to disable VPN because I bought this gear used, right? So when I plugged the router in, it came from a grocery store, a local grocery store. And it was not disabled. So as soon as I plugged the thing in, it opened up a network connection, VPN connection to the grocery store. So I had to call there and say, hey, I just bought this gear. Do you see any suspicious looking traffic or unauthorized connections? It was me. I disabled it, okay? So that can often happen. The moral of the story is if you're going to sell your old gear, factory reset it first. In this case, they didn't do that for my benefit because the license key. I actually have a key for it, so it's no big deal, but they didn't know that, right? So, all right, so that's roughly how this is going to be designed. If you open up Brightspace and you look, I've uploaded all the configuration commands as well as an explanation of what we're building and why. This is how you configure your home lab. And once you are able to actually successfully do this, your skill level will be really high, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do it. If you guys want to play around with the WatchGuard, I'll allow you to do that, but it's not part of the curriculum. So all you guys really need to know is how to configure the trunking from the Cisco router to the HP switch. And the method to do that is different from how you did it in Packet Tracer, okay? So HP doesn't do trunking the same way. A lot of the commands between Cisco and HP gear is similar. This is different, so I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? So first things first, let's assume that, hey, I just bought this new WatchGuard. Well, not new, totally used WatchGuard. I'm going to get it for my home lab. I need to set it up, but I have no idea how to get into it or if it's a brick. Sometimes you can buy a brick, okay? It's passworded, you go to factory reset it, it's not working, the factory reset doesn't work, you can't get in. You spent 50 bucks, oh well, these used to be 5 grand, right? So it's a bit of a gamble sometimes. And we may find that with this other one, because I've got one brand new out of a box, not brand new, but it's been set up, brand new to me. I've never looked at it before. Right here, still in bubble wrap, right? So this one is configured, I know it works. This one isn't. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just power it off. And I'm going to check to see if I can get an IP from DHCP, which I should be able to. And that will be half of the equation on whether or not we'll be successful at this, okay? A lot of it depends on what's happening on the network side, but Jim assured me everything should work fine. laptop up and running. You guys can see what I'm doing. While I'm doing this, how many of you have got a hold of the textbook for the course now? The Microsoft textbook. 2, 3. Okay, so that's a few, 4, okay. We can do a little bit better, all right? Here's what's gonna happen. Once we get out of doing the routing and switching stuff, I'm gonna start teaching you virtualization. VirtualBox, we'll start with VirtualBox. I think it's about as far as we can get. VirtualBox will do everything we need to do. Personally, I like it better than VMware for this kind of stuff. And so we teach you VirtualBox on the server, and Linux is on the server. We're going to create accounts for that. You'll all be able to like remote desktop from your workstation to the server, and you'll have your own desktop experience. There's going to be some routing involved there as well. Okay. And then we're going to start installing Windows Server as a virtual machine, okay? I'll demonstrate that as well. There is one hang-up, which I hope to get fixed before we get to that point, and that is to configure Federation services for Windows Server, which is the coolest part of Windows Server, in my opinion. It's part of Active Directory. It requires a valid public SSL certificate and a public IP. So I don't know if we're going to be able to actually make that work. I would love to, because then what we could do is you could actually log in as your own desktop on each of these workstations, and we could map every workstation in here as part of the domain. And then you go from one computer to another computer with your login, just like kind of how it works in class, right? You know how you can log in with your credentials. So we would be configuring that. So you can go to any computer on the domain with your credentials, log in with your credentials, and you're going to get the security access that you've been cleared for, right? So that's kind of the point of Windows Server. And in Linux, I'm going to teach you how to install a web server, like Apache, how to configure OpenSSH, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay? All right, so let's see if this works. Okay, so all right, so this is the assignment or lesson, okay? It's not really an assignment as such, it's more practice or more demonstration, okay? Download this, save it, keep it with you for the rest of your life, okay? It will help you when you're out on a job and your job is to deploy a bunch of stuff. You need to know how to configure Cisco in this way, all right, which is very common. All right, so let's see if I can, so this is the Watchguard software here. I'm just going to close this. I'm going to put this up on the network attached storage. It'll be under like Linux stuff, even though it's Windows. Oh, we need to first of all check to see if we got an IP. So let's see if I can config. That does not look good. Connect that, so I wonder. How is trouble finding it?
shortcut keys
Okay, so I see one issue, and that is I don't have connectivity between the Firebox and the network. And that could be because I'm using straight through cable. And if you're going router to router, you need a crossover cable. I don't think that that's going to work. Try it and see what happens. No, I've got no connection there at all. Aha, it was the port. Okay, I've got a connection happening here now, so let's see what it does. So this one here is not connected to the patch panel. I'm going to shoot IP config. Right, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to see if I'm ending up on a new network here. So there's the Wi-Fi that I'm connected to. That's the lab Wi-Fi. That's not what I'm looking for. I've got this address here is new, okay? 192.168.1.100. I think that's the WatchGuard, okay? Assigning that. Gateway is 192.168.1.1. That looks right. So let's see if I can ping that. And it can. Now let's see if I can log into it. All right, we're in. Okay, finally. I was worried that wasn't going to work, okay? So that would have really made our lesson short today. There's lots of times when things like this, when you're dealing with unknowns, that things can happen, right? So the key is not to get worked up about it. Don't stress about anything, right? There's always a backup plan or something else we can do. So this is the management software for the WatchGuard router, okay? It's a Windows program, okay? And it's got a couple different components to it. So what we're in right now is the system manager, and then to actually make changes, so I log in as read-only is the default username. Okay, no, it's status. Status is the default username, read-only is the default password. To make changes, you have to log in as admin, and the password is like right pass or right, I don't know, we can look it up by default, okay? So when I expand this, you can see all of the adapters, okay? So these are the ports on the back of the router. I've got 2 of them disabled, and I've set up 3 networks, okay? So the reason why I did that is I've got Eth0 connected to this port here, and it's going out to the PF-Sense that belongs to the school, right? And Eth1, it's got that 172.3.1 address by DHCP. Eth1 is configured as 192.168.1.1/24 network, right? That's what assigned me the IP address of .100. It issued that to my laptop. And then I've got another optional trusted port open, which I'm going to connect out to the Cisco 1900 router, okay? So to configure these, I have to go into Policy Manager. So you go to this button right here in WatchGuard. It's called Policy Manager. Click on that. That's strange. Not sure what happened there. Anyway, it's opening Policy Manager now. All right, so here you can see that VPN that I had to disable, right? So it opened up an IP tunnel to that grocery store's actual network. Yeah. So I've got that disabled, and you can see some other settings that I've got here, right? Certain things are blocked and certain things aren't. Actually, nothing looks really blocked other than the VPN. can. So it's allowing DNS, it's allowing ping, and so on. So we don't really care too much about this for now. What we want to be looking at is the network configuration. So understand that there's a difference between the system manager and the policy manager, okay? So the system manager just shows you what's going on with the router. The policy manager allows you to change what's going on with the router. So if we wanted to change a firewall setting, block a certain port or do whatever, anything you want to change, you do through the policy manager. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look at how to set up these ports, okay? So if I wanted to alter the ports, see how we're doing this now in a Windows interface instead of like typing off the command line? Right? It's nice and easy to administrate until there's a problem. But I've got port 0, it's running DHCP, right? So how do I configure that? I just click on the port, and I click on configure, and I can put the settings in here, right? It's very easy. I'm like, okay, get the IP automatically, use DHCP, which is Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. That means if that's selected, as soon as you plug this thing into a switch, it's going to get an IP address and DNS from another router, okay? So just to verify that I've got internet access, I'm going to ping 8.8.8.8, okay, from my Windows machine. And it's working. So let's check to see if DNS is working. Ping google.com. Okay? So as a basic router firewall, I could literally just have one device plugged in on port 1. And this would work perfectly. I could block ports, I could do all sorts of stuff, right? Just for my laptop. But that's not really our goal here. We want to configure a network. So we're going to add a layer of complication now. I've got this Cisco 1900 that belongs to the school that Jim so graciously lent me to play around with. And I have to say I've fallen in love with it. It's much nicer than the ones that are in my rack at home, okay? I really like it, and I think you will buy one. So, in the Packet Tracer Lab, I had you modifying FA00 and FA01 as the network ports, right? This is a newer, nicer router. And so when you see FA0, that means it's fast Ethernet, which maxes out at 100 megs, right? This is gigabit, so it's G0, G00 and G01, all right? I'm going to plug this thing in now. And power it up. Now, to administrate this, I'm going to be using a USB mini wire, okay? So you should have all this gear. You should have this in your backpack at all times, because you're not sure exactly what kind of connection you're going to need to get into the router or switch that you're working on, okay? So small, I had a hard time finding the port. My eyes are pretty bad though. They're getting worse. My neighbor came over this morning. She's like, hey, read my shirt. She's literally at the end of my yard. You gotta come close. And she had to get like that close to me before I need glasses. I have glasses, I just never wear them. Okay, so this will let us configure the router. Now remember, I've already configured this because I had to lab everything out in my own lab before I brought it to you guys in case, you know, you don't want to see me sitting here trying to figure stuff out, right? So that's what we call doing things in the lab versus putting it in production. So by the time you're ready to put stuff in production, it better work, okay? That way it makes you look smart. Okay, so just like that. Okay, not much happened, but I promise you something happened, so let's take a look. Just let me close that for now. Close that too, and that. Leave that open while working. Okay, we don't need packet tracer, close that. All right, so we're going to use a program called Putty to connect to the router, all right? So, got that here. It's a free program, you can download and install it, it's just called Putty. It does a lot of stuff. You can open up SSH connections, raw, telnet, like, this is a great little application. All right, so when you first open it up, it's a little bit intimidating. It's like, whoa, there's too many settings here. It's really simple. We don't want to bother with any of this other stuff. See how we're in session?